Well, even on a day when a high-level U.S. delegation visited Gaza to tout aid efforts, dozens more Palestinians were killed trying to access food, underscoring, of course, the dangerous conditions they face trying to stave off famine. The envoy, Steve Witkoff, and U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, you can see there, toured one of the 3 operational sites run by the controversial Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Witkoff says the visit was meant to assess humanitarian conditions and help craft a plan to deliver food and aid. Some aid groups call these sites death traps. The UN says nearly 1,400 Palestinians have been killed while seeking food since the foundation began operations in May. And it says most were shot by Israeli forces. The IDF has acknowledged firing warning shots, but says it does not target civilians. Gaza's health ministry said 53 aid seekers were killed today. Gaza Hospital says at least 3 were killed near the same site visited by Witkoff and Huckabee. One man who was shot in the stomach spoke to CNN. Have a listen to this.
As soon as Witkoff arrived in the area, there was random gunfire. The shooting intensified, along with drones and quadcopters in the air, and they started firing at people. Bodies are scattered all over the place. We can't survive like this. Open the crossings.
Well, Ambassador Huckabee, meantime, is praising the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, saying it has accomplished what he calls an incredible feat. He says it has delivered more than 100 million meals since May. And that just is important. That works out, just for all of you listening to that comment, to less than a meal a day for Gaza's 2.1 million residents. The starvation crisis has gotten worse on the foundation's watch, with the UN-backed food security group saying famine is now unfolding. For one mother who's already lost a child to malnutrition, this is what the crisis looks like, sitting by her daughter's bedside as her body slowly withers away.
Bit by bit, I feel I'm slowly losing my daughter, day after day. Everything she's suffering from is multiplying. She's 8.5 years old, her weight is around 11 kilograms, and blood is 6. Bit by bit, she will have complications in her vision, in walking, and even in speaking. Now she's having great difficulty in speaking.
That's reality on the ground. Well, the World Food Programme says it would be unconscionable to wait for an official declaration of famine to begin flooding Gaza with life-saving aid. Antoine Renard is the country director of the World Food Programme. Palestine. He just left Gaza and is now in Jerusalem. Antoine, great to have you back on the show. As we have just stated, you have just left Gaza. Can you just tell us and tell our viewers what you have seen on the ground? Because, of course, as we said, this week alone, we heard from the UN-backed Food Security Agency saying the worst-case scenario of famine is unfolding in Gaza.
Well, in fact, I'm still in Gaza City. I will be leaving very soon, so I can even speak to you from where it's currently happening. The famine risk is really growing fast. You have 500,000 of the population that is on brink on famine. There was, again, an alert that sadly had to confirm what was already raised in the middle of May, where if the situation was not improving, we would actually face what is the current situation. 2 children out of 10 are actually malnourished. I was with Hiba just today in Gaza City, and what she was telling me is that out of her 3 children, they are eating only a quarter of a loaf of bread. Herself is sometimes spending 2 days without eating. I had another headed household woman that was actually explaining to me, Hedaya, that her son is 14 and she's afraid because they actually have no access to food whatsoever. So what her son is actually doing, 14 years old, he actually goes to distribution center or he goes towards some of the UN convoys. And every time that she leaves, she's afraid that he's losing her life because these areas are actually facing gunfire. There are population that are actually, this young boy, 14 years old, could die just for a kg of wheat flour. That is the situation on the ground.
And, you know, a NASA hospital says 3 were killed near the same site today. I think we've seen 53 aid seekers killed today, according to Gaza's health ministry. That speaks to exactly what you have been saying. I spoke, Antoine, this week to Dr. Maynard, who you will know very well, who spoke very eloquently and incredibly detailed about the impact of malnutrition and what that does to the human body. On a psychological level, as you speak to these mothers who are sharing a loaf of bread with their entire family,
the first challenge that they have is actually themselves. They are actually deprived from what is the basics. They're actually begging to actually manage to have from any of the neighbors that have still a son, that still have, a man that is around to manage to bring them a bit of food. But the problem that you have is that the whole population is actually facing a wave of starvation. So you have a whole social fabric that currently is collapsing in Gaza. And that's what you see when you actually go to any of the tents. The main message I'm getting also from some of these women is, where are the bakery that used to be around? Where is the kitchen? Because now there are very few kitchens still up and running with a bit of boiled water and lentils. They're asking me and begging me to say, but where were your distribution systems? They've been disrupted. I can't explain that to them. So what they're really asking for is, bring back what was the kitchen around the corner, the bakery that was there with actually fresh bread. Where is also the box where I could queue on a monthly basis to actually serve my children? This is what people are telling me on the ground.
And I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Antoine, I understand from my team that you've also visited the north of Gaza, is this correct? Just correct me if I'm wrong here.
Correct.
Can you tell us what you
correct.
saw? Because we have a very, very limited sense of what is happening in the north.
So what you have, and that's why currently I'm in Gaza City, I actually wanted to make sure I was with the team of the World Food Programme, but also all the humanitarian that are currently still operating in Gaza. We are working on convoy that are either coming from Kerem Shalom, which is in the south, or from Zikim, which is one of the entry points in the north. What I've been doing with our team on the World Food Programme is actually to be part of the convoy. What the World Food Programme is actually making sure is that there's more food getting in. Our objective is to have 100 trucks every day to get into Gaza. And so far, we had an average of 80, and today we managed to have 100. But to tell you what's going on to just bring these trucks, it's actually our team are spending hours and hours to actually go sometime through some of the most densely areas with empty trucks, with our own armored vehicle. We run through people. We actually get to a checkpoint, finally get on the platform, and you have thousands and thousands of people that are just waiting that we come out of the checkpoint because we have a single road to go up and to go down. And currently, the prices of any commodity are still skyrocketing. The only positive objective that we can see is thanks to the fact that we brought around 6,000 metric tons over the last week. The price of wheat flour went from $85 for 1 kg to now around, it's around $12. Wow, but that's all we managed to do. We didn't manage to restart our distribution systems.
And very briefly, before we go here, Antoine, so, we mentioned Mike Huckabee visiting today, praising the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. I think he said, the fact that distributed some 100 million meals in Gaza. When you hear that, how do you react?
Well, the point that you have is that if you look at any families that you can stand with in Gaza City, you realize that it's not sufficient in terms of the number of distribution centers. What is important is actually to reinstate at scale where population are. You can't do 20 kilometers actually to fetch your food. There's still a conflict that is ongoing. There are risks every time you move into Gaza. So I think that my main message to you is that we need to be able to do a surge, and not just through a pause. We need actually a ceasefire. The last one, we used to move 500 trucks, 600 trucks on a daily basis, and now we are actually contemplating 100 trucks a day. This is not sufficient.
Yeah. And just to put into perspective, yet again, from we heard from the U.S., if 100 million meals had been distributed to Gaza, each one of Gaza's 2.1 million people, that works out at just one meal a day for 47 days for every resident. Just some perspective there for our viewers. Antoine, thank you very much as always. Good to see you, Antoine. Appreciate it.